In this section, we're going to just briefly look at the personal uses for technology, specifically technology in daily life, ways you can use technology to enhance productivity and learning, a little bit of time on users with disabilities, and then just a really brief little discussion around green computing relative to daily life. So one of the things that you're going to hit with here is that you guys have all referred to as digital citizens, or really digital natives, which means most of you grew up with technology. Whereas folks who are my age, we had technology, but we didn't really have computers, and computer didn't even really show up in my life. First computer I remember ever really being able to see and touch was a real basic computer, and it wasn't until I was in 12th grade, and it was the simplest computer you ever imagined. You really couldn't do anything with it. But most folks, younger folks who are in the 18 to 20-year-old range, probably grew up with cell phones or iPads or having a computer in the house. So this is something that's just basically you've always experienced in your life. And as a result, because of what we looked about in the last section and how computers have gotten smaller and faster and they're embedded in everything, it's really completely integrated into your life. So we're going to look a little bit about how that occurs and a couple of things in this particular section. So we talked a little bit before about artificial intelligence, but just the many different ways that you are using it today. I don't know if anybody else is using Siri or Google Assistant or Alexa. My kids tend to use that fairly often. I actually am not really comfortable with it. I don't think it works a lot well, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that everybody's using every day. Social media, online ads, websites, video games, Apple Music or Amazon Music or any of the other, Spotify, cars, smart cars, automated cars, GPS apps, security access, everything. I mean, I don't know if you could go through a day without actually touching technology, without making a real concerted effort to avoid it. Like if you're camping or something like that, even then you probably get cell phone access. So you're probably using your phone. So the net of it is technology is everywhere in your life. Now, some of the things that they use technology for are really kind of game changers. So robotics, this little picture here is a person getting surgery. Now it's not, the robot's not performing the surgery, but the doctor, instead of actually using the tools to open the patient up and do the surgery, is over there on some type of immersive computer console. And then the robot is actually doing what he tells it to do. So he's probably got a better view there. He's telling the robot to go in there and make a particular incision or remove something, maybe using some type of magnification. So it's actually more precise. I had a friend who had surgery, and he had a choice between having the doctor do the surgery or the computer or kind of a robot do the surgery. And the doctor said, have the robot, because the robot, less, chance for mistakes with the robot is much, 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 much lower. Again, I hope I don't have that choice to make in the near future, but a lot of science fiction. If you've seen any of the Alien series, the latest one, Prometheus, there's a whole kind of surgery tube that they get into, and the computer says, what do you want to do? And it scans and does whatever and sews you right up and you get out. So it's that type of assistance is probably coming in your lifetime. Enterprise computing, you'll probably get a question on this. Enterprise computing sounds a little bit daunting when you look at it, but just think about it as a company. So if you go into a store, and that's a company, for the sales piece, you're going to be using that to, when you check out, sometimes the system is going to be more than just a cash register. It's going to decrement inventory. It's going to go and process your payment and give you a receipt. But each part of a company has technology that's very specific to its function. So, some of them are really obvious, like manufacturing, which we looked at robots before. We'll look at that really briefly at the end of this conversation. But some of those are a little bit more difficult, like customer service. When you call for a problem, someone's probably using technology to log the problem. When you call and order something, they're using a system to find out if it's in inventory or not, and also to complete the sale. There's behind the scenes functions like accounting that are keeping track of money that's being spent, money that's being earned. So the thing to take away from here is that in large companies and even small companies, technology is usually used by every function in the company. Disabilities. I don't know if anybody is having, in this course, has any type of disabilities. If you have some disabilities with respect to hearing, then this is going to be very difficult for you because there's no closed captioning on this video. If some people, have problems with sight, they're going to have some problems where you can listen to this, but you can't see the slides. So there's been technology that have been developed to kind of help that. Screen readers do what they do. So if you would have a screen reader running on your computer, and most of this stuff is probably available on your computer, it would actually read the text off the screen to you. Alternate to text would just be text that would sometimes appear below a picture that it describes the picture. And of course, then the screen reader could read that. Captioning, I mentioned before, speech recognition software, so you can dictate. So if you can't, for some reason, you have some issues with typing, you could just talk into a microphone and then the words would appear on the screen. Again, same thing with input devices for people with physical disabilities, very similar stuff. TTY machines. Anyway, and there are laws like the American with Disabilities Act and this other one, Individual with Disabilities Education Act, which actually suggest, but sometimes don't always mandate, that technology has to be, or these type of assisted technologies have to be made available. But as we get more sophisticated and more sensitive to folks with different disabilities and challenges, people are building those into the software so that they become more readily available. Finally, in this class, we're going to talk really briefly about green computing. Green is everywhere now. But basically, you probably haven't thought about how much potential waste is involved with computing. Some of it is pretty obvious. It used to be the idea that we get away from paper, so we wouldn't be using up so much resources in terms of printing things out all the time. Although I'm not 100% sure that that's occurred. People still do a lot of printing, but it does. With the emergence of electronic copies of documents and electronic routing and signing, you don't need as much paper. But other things that you might not think of right off the bat, just how much power is being used by computers. I know that in my house right now, I have 2 children living with me still, and they both use computers and other devices. I'm using a computer, my wife's using a computer. So we're all just using a lot of electricity just to keep it running. So if you have more energy efficient products, then it'll just use less electricity. The other thing, which we probably just experienced really with the COVID-19, is a lot of people telecommuting. So if you're working from home, well, you don't have to use gas in order to go from one place to another. So you're cutting down on emissions and also just the use of petrol-based products. And then one piece that I don't usually think about is when you get rid of something, a lot of the materials inside of a computer, some of them could be bad for the environment. So you need to be careful about how you dispose of them. Lots of communities have days where they'll take computers or monitors or other electronic devices and either recycle them or dispose of them in a way that doesn't cause any harm to the environment. Okay, so that ends the second section. We'll have one more, 1.3. We'll talk about technology in the professional world. And then we'll be done with this particular module and move on to the next.